The late afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow across the small living room. Emma sat in her favorite chair by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The house was quiet, too quiet, and the silence pressed against her like a soft, persistent weight. She loved her grandmother dearly. But since Grandma had been out visiting a friend for the day, the house felt impossibly empty. Emma's eyes wandered to the framed photographs on the mantel. One showed her grandmother laughing with a younger Emma, both of them holding ice cream cones that had begun to drip down their hands. Another captured her grandmother's best friend, Claire, smiling warmly, standing beside them on a sunny afternoon in the park. Emma remembered that day vividly, the way Claire's laughter had filled the air, making even the ordinary feel magical. A gentle breeze rustled the curtains, and Emma sighed, letting her gaze drift beyond the window. The garden outside was blooming with light summer flowers, a riot of colors that seemed almost too vibrant for such a quiet street. She loved the garden, loved the stillness, but sometimes the quiet made her long for more. For someone to talk to, someone who truly understood her world, her hopes, and the small secret dreams she rarely shared. Emma had always been careful with her heart. She had friends at work, neighbors she chatted with occasionally. But something about those interactions always felt surface level. She wanted more than casual conversations. She wanted connection, that rare kind that made you feel seen even when words weren't exchanged. As she sat there, lost in thought, the sound of a soft knock at the front door startled her. It was faint, almost hesitant, but it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. Emma wasn't expecting anyone, and the thought of a visitor filled her with a mixture of curiosity and unease. She set her cup down and walked to the door, her bare feet making soft padding sounds against the wooden floor. When she opened the door, Emma froze for a moment. Standing there was Claire, her grandmother's closest friend. The woman whose laughter and warmth had once made Emma feel like she was part of a little, magical world. But today, something was different. Claire's eyes were tired, and her usually confident posture seemed fragile, almost unsure. There was a vulnerability there that Emma had never seen before, and it tugged at her heart in a way she couldn't quite explain. "Hi, Emma," Claire said softly, her voice tinged with hesitation. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I just needed a place to sit for a moment." Emma felt a sudden rush of concern. Her instincts told her something was wrong, though she didn't know what. "Of course," she replied, stepping aside. "Come in. You're always welcome here." Claire moved slowly into the living room, glancing around as if seeing the space for the first time. Emma watched her closely, noting the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her hands twisted together nervously. Something about this moment felt fragile, delicate, like a glass ornament that might shatter if handled carelessly. "Thank you," Claire whispered, finally sitting on the couch with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of unspoken troubles. "I didn't mean to drop by unannounced. I just needed someone to talk to." Emma sat across from her, unsure of what to say at first. Words felt inadequate somehow. All she could do was offer her presence, the silent kind of support that sometimes spoke louder than anything else. "It's okay," she said gently. "You don't have to explain. I'm here. That's enough." Claire's eyes softened, and for a moment, the tension in her face melted. She looked younger somehow, not in age but in spirit, like someone had let down a shield they had been carrying for too long. Emma felt a strange warmth in her chest, an unfamiliar mix of empathy and something else she couldn't name yet. It was the kind of feeling that made the world seem bigger, deeper, and a little more complicated than she had realized. The room settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind that only exists when two people share a space with unspoken understanding. Outside, the garden shimmered in the fading light, the colors more vivid than ever. Emma found herself wondering what had brought Claire here today. What troubles had followed her to this doorstep, and whether this unexpected visit would change the quiet pattern of their lives. As the minutes stretched into an unspoken pause, Emma realized something else. Her own heart had begun to stir. She had always admired Claire from a distance, for her kindness, her laughter, her ability to make even the smallest moment feel meaningful. And now, seeing her in this vulnerable human moment, Emma felt a connection she hadn't anticipated. Something had shifted in the room, subtle but undeniable. The world outside seemed to fade, leaving just Emma, Claire, and a shared sense of quiet understanding. Emma didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, something extraordinary was about to begin. And then, as Claire's eyes met hers with a mixture of trust and uncertainty, Emma knew that her life and perhaps her heart was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. Emma poured a fresh cup of tea for Claire and handed it to her. The steam rose gently between them, curling like wisps of memory. Claire took a sip, closing her eyes for a moment as if letting the warmth soak into her soul. Emma sat quietly, watching her, feeling a strange mix of familiarity and distance, like looking at someone through a window she had forgotten existed. "Do you remember the summer we spent at the lake?" Claire asked suddenly, her voice soft, almost hesitant. Emma blinked, surprised by the shift. It had been years ago, when Emma was a teenager and Claire would often visit her grandmother. Emma smiled, the memory flooding back in vivid colors. "How could I forget? You and Grandma tried to teach me to fish, and I kept falling into the water instead." She laughed lightly. Claire's eyes twinkled, despite the fatigue she carried today. "You were determined, though. Even when you kept slipping in, you never gave up." "I admired that," she said. Her voice held something more than just nostalgia. There was warmth and maybe a little unspoken admiration for Emma herself. They sat in silence for a moment, letting the sound of the old clock ticking fill the space between them. Then Claire added, "It feels strange being back here after all this time. So much has changed. And yet, some things feel exactly the same." Emma nodded, understanding perfectly. Life had moved forward in unexpected ways, taking people to different places, creating new routines, and yet some bonds remained untouched, quietly waiting for a moment to be remembered. Claire had always been part of that quiet, unspoken part of Emma's world of presence that lingered even when miles and years separated them. "I think that's why I came here," Claire said after a pause. "I needed a reminder of what matters, of people who actually see you, not just who you appear to be on the outside." Emma felt a tug at her chest. She understood that feeling better than anyone. Even now, with colleagues at work or friends from school, there was a part of her that longed for that deeper recognition, the kind of recognition that didn't require words, that existed in shared laughter, shared silence, and the small, thoughtful gestures that only a few people in a lifetime ever truly notice. Claire's gaze wandered around the room, landing on the photograph of her, Emma, and Emma's grandmother at the park. "I remember this day," Claire said quietly. "You were so little, but you had that spark. You always reminded me of hope, Emma, even then." Emma's heart swelled. She had never thought of herself as a beacon of hope, but hearing Claire say it made her feel seen, truly seen. A warmth spread through her chest, gentle but undeniable, as if something long dormant had been gently stirred awake for a while. They reminisced quietly, each memory a thread weaving them closer together. The time they had baked cookies and accidentally burned half the batch. The rainy afternoon when they built a fort in the living room. The summer evenings when they sat on the porch counting stars. They laughed softly. But behind the laughter was a gentle longing, a sense that life had pulled them apart for reasons neither could fully explain. Claire hesitated, then said, I guess I always felt like there were things I shouldn't say, feelings I shouldn't show. I didn't want to risk changing what we had." Emma looked at her, surprised. "Changing what we had." Claire nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Yes, our bond. I was afraid that admitting how much I cared or how much I noticed might make things awkward, or worse, push you away." Emma felt her own chest tighten. She had always felt the same way, drawn to Claire, yet hesitant, unsure if the closeness she felt was only nostalgia or something deeper. They had danced around unspoken feelings for years. careful not to disturb the delicate balance between friendship, admiration, and the faint stirrings of something more. I think we've been afraid of each other," Emma said softly. "Afraid to say too much, to admit what we felt. But here you are, sitting in my living room, and I feel glad you came." Claire's eyes glistened with emotion, but it wasn't sadness. It was relief, recognition, and something warmer. Something lighter that hadn't been there before. "I'm glad I came too," she said. "It feels safe, being here with you, like I can finally breathe." They spent the next hour talking quietly about their lives since they last spent real time together. Claire spoke about her work, the small victories, and the moments that had left her feeling both proud and lonely. Emma shared her own struggles and triumphs, the little Vi. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, casting warm patterns across the living room. Emma was already awake, her thoughts lingering on the conversation from the previous evening. Claire's presence had stirred something she hadn't fully recognized, something quiet, persistent, and beautiful. There was a subtle tension in her chest, the kind that comes when old memories meet present possibilities. Claire appeared in the doorway, holding a small paper bag. "Good morning," she said, smiling softly. "I thought I'd bring some breakfast. I didn't know what you liked, so I grabbed a few things." Emma's heart fluttered at the simple thoughtfulness. "You didn't have to," she said, though the warmth in her chest made her smile. "But I'm glad you did." They sat at the small kitchen table, sunlight spilling across their faces. The quiet intimacy of shared space, the casual conversation, and the unspoken understanding between them made Emma feel both comforted and nervous at the same time. The years of distance and hesitation seemed to melt slightly with every word exchanged. After breakfast, they decided to step into the garden. The late summer flowers were in full bloom, and the gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine and lavender. Claire paused beside a bed of marigolds and ran her fingers lightly across the petals. "It's beautiful here," she said softly. "I've missed the colors, the calm, the sense that life can be gentle sometimes." Emma stood close, her eyes tracing the curve of Claire's face as she spoke. There was a softness there, a vulnerability that had been hidden behind composure and distance for so long. And in that moment, the years of hesitation, of quiet admiration, of unspoken longing, all of it flooded back. Emma realized how much she had missed this connection, how much she had craved it without fully admitting it. A small butterfly fluttered past, landing on the edge of the stone fountain. Claire watched it with fascination, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's amazing, isn't it? Something so small can feel so important." Emma smiled, her own thoughts mirrored in the metaphor. "Yes," she said. "Sometimes the smallest things remind us of the biggest truths." Their conversation drifted to the present small worries, current joys, and subtle frustrations. Yet every topic seemed to carry an undertone of something deeper, something they had never quite acknowledged before. Emma realized that Fator, perhaps coincidence, had brought Claire to her doorstep at a time when both of their hearts were ready to recognize it. "Do you ever wonder," Claire said quietly, "why some connections stick with you even when life pulls you in different directions?" Emma met her gaze. "All the time. Some people, some moments. They leave marks on you you don't even realize until much later." For a moment, silence settled over them. It was the kind of silence that wasn't empty, it was full of feeling, anticipation, and reflection. Emma felt her pulse quicken, a gentle awareness that something subtle but important was happening between them. This wasn't dramatic in a loud way. It was gentle, almost fragile, yet undeniably powerful. Later, as they walked along the garden path, a sudden summer rain began to fall, soft and warm. Claire laughed, raising her face toward the sky, letting the droplets land on her skin. "I forgot how much I loved this," she said, eyes sparkling. "It's like the world slows down for a moment, just enough to notice what really matters." Emma couldn't help but join her, laughing as the rain soaked their hair and clothes. They ran for cover under the old oak tree, breathing heavily, hearts racing not from the rain, but from the simple, shared joy of the moment. In that instant, the years of restraint and hesitation seemed irrelevant. The past, the present, and the feelings they had both tried to ignore collided in a single perfect moment of connection. Under the shelter of the tree, Claire looked at Emma, her expression soft but intense. "I didn't realize how much I needed this," she said quietly. "Being here with you. It feels like coming home." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, a mix of emotion too big for words. She reached out, brushing a wet strand of hair from Claire's face, a simple gesture. But it carried the weight of years of admiration, longing, and quiet affection. "I feel the same," she whispered. The rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. And for a while, they just stood there, letting the sound of falling drops fill the space between them. No words were needed. The connection was clear in the glance they shared, in the warmth of their proximity, and in the unspoken promise that this was only the beginning. As the clouds began to part, sunlight streaming through the branches, Emma realized something profound. Sometimes life gives you a second chance, a quiet twist of fate to reconnect with people who matter most. And when that chance comes, you feel it in your heart long before you see it in the world around you in that moment. Emma and Claire both understood that the past had prepared them for this present twist, the small event that reignited a connection that had never truly faded. And as they walked back to the house, side by side, laughter and quiet conversation blending seamlessly, Emma felt the first real spark of hope for something gentle, meaningful, and enduring between them. After the rain had passed, the garden glistened with tiny droplets on every petal and blade of grass. Emma and Claire returned to the house, their clothes still damp, their cheeks tinged with a soft flush of shared laughter. There was a quiet intimacy between them now, unspoken but undeniable. And yet neither knew quite how to bridge the gap between familiarity and confession. They settled back in the living room, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows and painting warm rectangles on the floor. Claire sank into the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap, while Emma took her usual chair by the window. The air was thick with the things they both wanted to say but hesitated to voice. Claire's eyes traced the lines of the room, settling on the photograph of Emma and her grandmother at the park. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked quietly, "and wonder what might have been if things had been different?" Emma's heart tightened. She had asked herself that very question countless times but had never shared it aloud. "All the time," she admitted softly. "Sometimes I wonder if we let our fears stop us from noticing the things that were right in front of us." Claire nodded, her gaze dropping to her hands. I was always afraid," she said slowly. "Afraid that expressing how much I cared or noticing you the way I did would change everything between us. So I stayed silent." Emma felt a pang of empathy and longing. She had felt the same hesitation, the same careful restraint, holding back words that might have made their bond more complicated. Yet here they were, years later, both quietly aching for connection, both aware of a deeper feeling neither had dared to name. "I think we've both carried this for a long time," Emma said softly. "This understanding that maybe we feel more than friendship, but we've never spoken it aloud." Claire looked up then, her eyes meeting Emma's, a mixture of relief and vulnerability shining through. "Yes," she whispered, "exactly that. I didn't want to risk losing what we had, but at the same time, I always wondered if you felt it too." The room seemed to shrink around them, holding only the two of them and the weight of unspoken truths. There was hesitation in Claire's movements, a careful stillness that betrayed the storm of emotions beneath the surface. Emma noticed it, understanding immediately the longing, the hesitation, the silent hope that maybe. Finally, the other felt the same. For a few moments, neither spoke. Words felt inadequate. They existed in the quiet glances, the soft exhale of shared breaths, and the subtle tension that lingered in the space between them. It was a delicate dance, one they had been performing for years without realizing it, now heightened by the closeness of this afternoon. "I remember," Claire began hesitantly, "the nights I stayed at your grandmother's house when I was younger, and I watched you reading by the window. You looked so peaceful, like nothing could touch you. I don't think I ever told you how much that stayed with me. Emma's chest tightened. She remembered those evenings, the soft glow of the lamp, the quiet of the house, and the comfort she felt with Claire nearby. "I felt the same way," she admitted. "I always noticed you, Claire. More than I probably should have, and more than I ever dared to say." A gentle silence followed, filled with a warmth that neither of them had expected. The admission hung in the air, subtle but powerful, a quiet bridge over years of restraint. They were finally acknowledging the feelings that had always been there, soft, tender and patient, but never spoken aloud. Claire shifted slightly, her hand brushing against the edge of the couch, close enough that Emma's fingers almost touched hers. The contact was accidental, and yet it felt intentional, a fleeting spark of connection that neither could ignore. Emma's heart raced, not with passion, but with the pure, deep excitement of being seen, understood, and mirrored. "I think," Claire said after a pause, her voice almost a whisper, "that the hardest part wasn't feeling this way. It was pretending we didn't." Emma nodded, her own voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, pretending that the quiet moments, the shared smiles, and the memories we treasure meant nothing. Pretending that the heart notices nothing when it notices everything." They sat in that gentle tension, the room filled with sunlight, the smell of rain lingering in the air, and the unspoken truth they had finally admitted to themselves. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the living room in warm, golden light. Emma sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. Despite the calm of the morning, her mind was restless. She couldn't stop thinking about Claire the way she had laughed in the rain yesterday. The vulnerability in her eyes, the unspoken words that had hovered between them like a delicate thread. Claire appeared in the doorway, carrying a small vase of wildflowers she had picked from the garden. She paused, noticing Emma's pensive expression. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of warmth and hesitation. "I thought these might brighten your table." Emma smiled, taking the vase from her. "They're beautiful." "Thank you, Claire." Her eyes met Claire's, and for a moment neither spoke. There was a tension in the air, one that was not uncomfortable but charged with quiet anticipation, like the pause before a long-awaited melody begins. Claire stepped closer, placing the vase carefully on the table. She leaned slightly, as if trying to find the right words. "Emma, I need to say something," she murmured, her voice trembling just enough to reveal the depth of her feelings. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. She had been waiting for this moment, though she hadn't known exactly how it would arrive. "You can say it," she whispered, her voice steady despite the rush of emotion she felt. Claire took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on Emma's eyes. "I've been holding back for too long," she began. "All these years I've tried to ignore the way I feel, the way I've always felt about you. But seeing you yesterday, sharing these moments, it made me realize I can't stay silent anymore." Emma's chest tightened. Every word was a pulse of emotion, a ripple that reached the corners of her heart. She leaned forward slightly, encouraging Claire without a word, letting her know that she was listening. Fully and completely. Claire swallowed, her hands clasping together nervously. "Emma, I care about you more than I probably should have. More than I've allowed myself to admit. And I think I've always cared, even when I didn't know how to say it." Tears pricked at Emma's eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of recognition. Every stolen glance, every quiet moment of shared laughter, every memory from the past, they all made sense now. The bond they had carried silently for years had been real, strong, and enduring. "I've felt the same," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I've felt it for so long, but I was afraid too, afraid of saying something that might change everything, afraid of losing what we already had." Claire's eyes softened, and a faint smile appeared, the kind that speaks of relief, hope, and joy all at once. "So we've both been waiting," she said, almost in wonder. "Waiting for the right moment or the courage to speak." Emma nodded. "Yes, waiting for a moment like this, And I think maybe it's here now." The room seemed to hold its breath, the sunlight dancing on the walls, the air filled with quiet anticipation. In that moment, they didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. The truth had been spoken, and that alone was enough. The unspoken bond that had lingered for years had finally been acknowledged. And it felt like the first step towards something extraordinary. Claire reached out slowly, placing her hand over Emma's. The touch was gentle, careful, but it carried a weight of emotion that words could not express. Emma felt her heart swell, a rush of warmth spreading through her chest. It was not fleeting desire, it was deep, abiding care, the kind of love that grows quietly, steadily, like sunlight warming the earth. "I've never been able to tell you before," Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how. I was afraid of ruining our friendship, of changing what we had. But I can't pretend anymore. I need you to know how much you mean to me." Emma squeezed Claire's hand gently. "No, and I feel the same. I've always known in my heart, even when I didn't dare to say it. You've always mattered to me, more than anyone." They sat together in silence for a moment, letting the weight of their shared truth settle. It was not loud, not flashy, not dramatic in the conventional sense, but it was profound. The turning point had arrived, not through an event or an accident, but through courage, honesty, and the willingness to finally speak the truth that had been carried silently for so long. Claire smiled, a mixture of relief and joy radiating from her. "So, where do we go from here?" she asked. Though she didn't need an immediate answer, Emma returned a smile, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't realized she'd been missing. "One step at a time," she said softly. "We start here with honesty, with understanding, and we see where it leads." Outside, the sunlight shifted, casting a warm glow across the room. For the first time in a long time, both Emma and Claire felt a sense of clarity, a quiet assurance that the bond they had shared for years could finally grow into something beautiful, intentional, and enduring. And in that gentle moment, surrounded by the soft light and the quiet stillness of the house, they understood that sometimes the greatest love stories begin not with grand declarations or dramatic gestures, but with the simple courage to speak the truth finally, openly, and from the heart. The evening settled softly over the small town, painting the sky in gentle shades of pink and lavender. Inside the house, Emma and Claire sat side by side on the living room couch, the quiet hum of the clock and the occasional chirp of evening birds filling the space between them. For the first time in years, there was no hesitation, no unspoken longing, no quiet restraint. Everything they had carried in their hearts, memories, admiration, and unspoken feelings had found its place in words, gestures, and quiet acknowledgement. Claire reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from Emma's face. "I never thought it would feel this easy," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the warm glow of the lamp beside them. "Like all those years of waiting were meant to prepare us for this moment." Emma smiled, feeling a gentle swell in her chest. "I think they were," she replied. "All those stolen glances, quiet conversations, little memories, they weren't wasted. They were building something we just hadn't seen until now." Claire nodded, her gaze turning thoughtful. "Strange, isn't it? How life can take its time, and yet somehow the important things always find their way back to you." Emma felt a lump in her throat at the honesty in Claire's words. It was a truth she had learned to carry quietly. Life did move unpredictably, but the people who mattered most often returned in moments when you least expected, bringing with them clarity, hope, and a gentle kind of joy. They spent the next hour reminiscing about their shared past, laughing softly at small misadventures, and reflecting on the moments that had shaped them both. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as though the years of silence had been only a prelude to the richness of the present. Each story, each memory, strengthened the bond between them, filling the space with warmth and familiarity. Later, they moved to the porch, wrapped in cozy blankets against the evening chill. The garden glimmered faintly under the light of the setting sun, the flowers still carrying the scent of the morning rain. Emma picked up a small stone from the pathway and turned it over in her hand, smiling faintly. "Do you remember," she asked, "the day we built that fort in the living room?" Claire laughed, the sound soft and melodic. "Yes, you insisted it had to have a window so the outside world could see in. And I'm pretty sure we got half the cushions stuck in the doorway." Emma laughed too, a warmth spreading through her chest. "I think that was the first time I realized how much I like spending time with you. Not just your presence, but everything about you. Even then, it felt important." Claire's expression softened, her eyes glistening slightly. "I felt the same," she admitted, "and I think I've carried that feeling with me all these years, even when I didn't fully understand it." The evening deepened, and with the sky now darkening into a peaceful indigo, they sat in a comfortable silence. It was not awkward or empty, it was full of understanding, trust, and the quiet reassurance that they were finally fully present for one another. Emma turned to Claire, her voice gentle. "I think what we have now, it's rare. The kind of bond that doesn't need labels or grand gestures. Just honesty, patience, and care." Claire nodded, her hand reaching for Emma's again. "Yes, and that's enough. It's everything we've ever wanted in its own quiet way." For the first time in a long while, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. It was not a loud, dramatic happiness. It was steady, comforting, and deeply rooted. The weight of years spent wondering, waiting, and hesitating had lifted, leaving only the warmth of shared hearts and mutual understanding as the stars began to appear one by one in the sky. Claire leaned back, resting her head lightly against the couch. "I never thought I'd find this," she murmured. "This quiet, gentle kind of love. But now that I have, I don't ever want to let it go." Emma smiled, her own heart echoing the sentiment. "Neither do I. And maybe that's the lesson we've learned, that sometimes love doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be there, patiently, faithfully, until the moment is right." They sat together as night fully embraced the town, the world outside slowing to a soft hush. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic gestures, only the simple, profound knowledge that they had found one another again. The past, with all its memories, mistakes, and unspoken words, had led them here toward a connection that was homes.